Hello, everyone. My name is Shelly Lynn Hughes, and I am the founder of Pursuit 365, as well as the new host of Talk Wednesdays. Today, I would like to welcome the incredible Maxine Friend. Maxine and I have known each other for a few years, but we're finally getting together to talk. Internationally acclaimed psychic medium and master coach Maxine Friend provides channeled psychic readings, workshops, and metaphysical mentorship programs. Maxine has published multiple digital courses to assist her clientele in reactivating their energetic ecosystem. For the last 5 years, Maxine has been working remotely as a digital nomad and has visited over 40 countries. Maxine speaks fluent French and is currently learning Spanish to acclimate. Is that correct? Did I say that right, Maxine? To living in Mexico. Maxine's clientele spans from all over the world and has been practicing professionally for over 15 years. Wow, Maxine, like absolutely incredible.
Wow, thank you.
Welcome to Pursuits Talk Wednesdays.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. Thank you.
It's an honor to have you. So you are in what part of Mexico right now? I know that you're abroad, so.
I'm in Playa del Carmen.
Playa del Carmen. And previously you were in?
I spent the summer in Canada, and prior to that, I was in Puerto Vallarta.
Okay, now, and what made you move I mean, you left Vancouver and then you went to one part of Mexico and another part of Mexico. What made you make that change? Because I mean, all three areas that you've lived in are incredible. So what made you make that change?
Well, it was a little bit of a detour. I was initially supposed to move to Portugal. I had an apartment set up and everything, but unfortunately, the visa process is very, very lengthy. So I gave it 6 months and realized the universe was directing me in a different direction. And so I responded and pivoted over to the Caribbean coast of Mexico.
Excellent, excellent. Yep, I've heard Portugal is pretty amazing. Quite a few people I notice have been moving to Mexico in the last few years. There's so many pros to living there. Love Vancouver, but I will say it's the rain is a little bit hard sometimes, right? And then also it's very expensive these days.
Yes, the climate was a huge deciding factor for me because I could work really anywhere in the world. I prefer to be in the sunshine. It just helps me with my mental health, my well-being. I do really well in the heat. So it's a really nice fit because I just love the Mexican people, the culture, the food. It's just a beautiful place to land.
Beautiful, beautiful people, beautiful place. Definitely.
Yeah.
So you're a psychic medium. And I want to know more about that. I've always found it really interesting. And this will actually be the first time for me to sit down and interview someone that is a psychic medium. You know, you hear about it, but I don't really know anything. So what made you become a psychic medium?
That's a really good question. It was definitely not a charted path from the onset. I come from a background in tech startup. And what really precipitated the change was the death of my mother 21 years ago. When she passed, we were very close, and I was able to communicate with her. And I always knew I was intuitive, but I wasn't aware that I could be doing this professionally. So I was told for years that I could. I would visit psychics, and they would all say the same thing. But I was stubborn, and I wanted to be taken seriously, and I chose a different path. So the rest, as they say, is history. Now, this is a huge passion of mine, is just to be able to be of service and just to service and assist people for their highest and greatest healing.
And I would say with this career that you've chosen, I mean, you must get two different types of people. You get the believers and the non-believers. I'm a believer. And I guess you're just probably the people that believe are drawn to you, and you know, you're drawn to the believers as well. So you must get all different types, because it is a completely different type of career
it's not a mainstream line of work. In my case, because I've been in the industry now for over 15 years, sounds like such a long time. The clients I've had for many years, some of them for over 10 years. And I don't run into issues with non-believing clients. It's very rare.
Oh, good.
But I will say, I will say it's an unusual career in the sense that you almost feel like you're auditioning every single time you see a client because they want to see what you're capable of, what messages you're capable of providing for them.
Absolutely. So is there, I know that in different, obviously businesses, careers, throughout the whole world, there's different trends that happen. Is there anything trending in your world right now?
Absolutely. It's interesting. When I started out in this industry, it was very behind closed doors. And now we're looking at an industry that's really flourished and it's become almost trendy. And I mean, we're all intuitive. I'm of the belief that we are all psychic. We all have intuitive and intuition. But now it seems to be very mainstream. There's more and more people picking up the craft and offering beautiful services to clients, which is a wonderful thing. I would say that the trend that people seem to really be hanging on to, there's two trends. The first trend is taking hallucinogenics like psilocybin and ayahuasca to speed up their ascension journey and in order to increase their intuitive abilities. And the second trend is manifestation. Those seem to be the two big topics that a lot of the younger generations love to discuss, communicate, and experience.
Amazing. And you probably can't talk about clients, but I imagine you get to see a lot of beautiful things happening when it comes to the manifestations.
Yeah, I don't put really a big focus on manifestation. I'm a believer of manifestation, but I always place the emphasis on my clients that they carry the power. They're the central point of power and intelligence throughout the reading. So the power is never with the reader. It's really with the person receiving the messages to see which messages resonate.
Wow.
So yeah, I always leave the power with them. It's their decision if they want to come back. It's their decision to decide what messages resonate.
Wow. I'm also wondering, okay, so what kind of clients seek out your services? Is it what type of clients?
The clientele has definitely evolved over the years. So with that now there's kind of an interesting trend with people that are very high achieving in their field. So I get a lot of influencers, actors, entrepreneurs, financiers. But what's interesting is they are harnessing the power of intuition to better themselves and their business and their career.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's great. So it sounds like you get a lot of businessy type, business career people.
Yes,
Correct?
and a lot of artists. So we'll get, people that are that are actors or, musicians. So there's the creatives, and a lot of them are, I never know who they are, but ultimately you find out later, oh, that person is famous or that person's actually quite well known in their field. And it's always, to this day, it's still shocking to me when that happens. Like, what the heck are you doing with me?
Yeah, but you've really built a name for yourself, and you're respected. So I can see, these high profile celebrities or actors or artists or whomever, the high profile ones seeking you out because of the name you've built and that you are real. As in any industry, there's a lot of fake, fake people out there that say they're doing their job, but you're renowned. So that's why they try to find you. I can see that.
Yeah, that is a handful because, obviously being a psychic medium, it's a completely unregulated industry. So you run into all kinds of people proclaiming all kinds of things. And so because I come from a startup business background, I always believe to just give 150% to everything you're doing and to just, for me, to be the best conduit I can be so the messages can come through for my clients. So that's really the intention that's encoded with each session with a client.
And so because you are bringing these messages through and you're working so closely with actual energy levels, how does that impact you in your energy levels? Like I would imagine, I don't know, like is there an impact with you?
Absolutely, there's an impact. You have to remember that when you're channeling, you probably don't know this, but when you channel information, you are within your higher self. When you are tapping into mediumship, you are stepping out of your higher self and tapping into the frequency of a different energetic signature. So because of that, a lot of times you can feel like a 40-watt light bulb. The base is 40 watts, and you feel like what's being screwed in is 2,000 watts.
Wow.
And so very quickly, when you're not dealing with energies that are compatible, right? Then you can, there's a lot of practices to avoid burnout or fatigue, but it's definitely an industry that you can't be working 8 hours a day, not even close. And it does require a lot of preparation and recovery time if you're opening and closing your field appropriately with protocol.
Okay. So now with that, do you notice, because you generally have multiple readings? It's not just one reading with someone, it would be multiple, I'm guessing, or sometimes is it just a one-time thing, or is there some where you're working with them for 6 months?
I have clients I've been working with for over 10 or 11 years. They've been with me for a really long time, and a lot, I would say 70% from what I view from the metrics are repeat clients. So that's a pretty high return.
Yeah,
but again,
fantastic.
I just leave it up to them. It's never anything that's suggested that they come back. It's really up to them if they feel the call.
So do you notice a difference between, say, the first reading energy levels and say the most current, like say if someone's been with you for 5 years, is there a huge difference between the first reading as the energy impacts you and the most current reading? Is there a difference, or it just depends on the person, or do they get stronger? Are they always changing?
Oh yes, it's one of the privileges of this work, and I'm very passionate about it. To see people evolve, grow, shift, and change is a privilege. To witness it, because it has nothing to do with you as the person passing on messages. That's their own personal evolution. They're putting in the work. So you could see people going from all kinds of stages of life. They're students. I have one client who was a student, and now she's a doctor, working in Australia.
Wow.
I've got clients that are in Hollywood. I've got clients all over the world. But to see the progress, to see, people that go from being single, that don't have love, to getting married and having babies, or traveling the world, it's just a privilege. It's the most incredible thing. So there's always an evolution with the reading. If it was always the same, there would be no value to effectively come back. But the reality is we're all evolving and changing and growing. And because I have the unique focus or the ability to see these people, go through their own personal evolution, you can see, especially with these high achieving clients that seem to be coming in, you see the change really quickly. And again, it's the most incredible thing to see. And it's also incredibly inspiring and motivating.
Now, are these changes happening quite quickly because they do the work after you've worked with them, or the change is happening because they've got more knowledge on to who they are, why they do what they do, what their path, their future? Like, what is it, because they do the work, or is it the opposite, or is it always different?
Everybody's different, but for the most part, I would say that the people are doing the work. It's free will, right? So there's what's predestined or what's encoded prior to your incarnation. And then there is your free will, which is you deciding how you choose to, step out of trauma or move through a challenging situation. It's up to you how you choose to move through that experience. So my job is really, it's not even me, it's my higher self really doing the channeling and the work and receiving the messages. But ultimately, it's the client that is making that choice through their free will experience and circumstances.
Wow. And is there any specific stories that you're allowed to share with us that would be a specific life-changing experience for a client? And I know that there's client, confidentiality, but is there something that you'd be allowed to share with us that is like, wow?
Yes, a story comes to mind that was just shared with me about 3 months ago. I cannot disclose the person's name. He's
Nope.
actually a well-known actor in Hollywood. And we didn't know, I didn't know, I'm stepping into channel here. I didn't know who he was or what he did. I don't even have cable. I had no idea. And so, and I never remember what's said really in channel. So he came back about 3 months ago and shared that that Spirit had told him that he would be on a set or a stage, and that someone that he worked with would have to be incredibly careful on a motorcycle because they run the risk of breaking their back.
Oh, wow.
And so the story that he shared is that it was actually his stunt double that was on the motorcycle and did, in fact, break his back. And so for him, he said that was a very affirming moment that, wow, this is real, this is happening. And of course, we don't normally like to tell the gloom and doom, but whatever comes up, it's not for us to judge. It's just to, share the information. But it was only him telling me that I even knew, because with channeled information, it's like you're tapping into a radio signal, and then you, just as quickly as you tap in, you cue out, and you don't really remember because they're not your memories. They're not your stream of consciousness. It's a channeled stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
So he had to share that story, or I'll get a letter. I just got a letter yesterday via email that a woman who was very skeptical about ever meeting love, she'd experienced a lot of trauma, and she just wrote an email saying that she's met her life partner, and she couldn't believe it because all the details of the person was just exactly as described. And I remember thinking, because she was very resistant to the messages, she was not someone who automatically believed, and she was very skeptical that she would ever meet someone based on that description. So again, it's amazing when you receive these messages back saying, hey, something you're doing is helping. And of course, isn't that the dream, that we're just hopefully being the best facilitator or the best messenger for people's highest good and healing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when you do receive messages that are, traumatic, that's got to be a bit hard on you, knowing and then making the decision, I guess, to open that up.
That's a good question, but the reality is you cannot step into ego with this work.
Yeah.
By discerning what messages are good or bad, is the ego taking over, and there's no place for ego in the channel. However, it is your responsibility to be in a position of empowerment when delivering those messages. If you are frightening people or scaring them, you're not empowering them with those messages. You're just instilling fear. So there is a responsibility in the mode of delivery, but it's not for you to decide what messages are good to share or not. That's definitely out of my hands. It's just whatever's provided.
Interesting. I love it. I love it. Now, I guess, do you work with a majority adults? Probably. Do you work with children or no?
I have worked with children only if their parents accompany them. I don't typically recommend that because, children are not fully formed human beings. And it's important that they have permission. So there's really, well-meaning parents out there that want their kids to have a reading, but typically it's not something I do. Typically my clientele runs between, it's probably around between 35 and 65, but sometimes it's between 25 and 45. So it's middle age mostly. But I have worked with young people, young adults, but only with their permission. So when people insist, oh, you have to go see this person, it makes the job a lot harder if they're not open to the experience, because energetically they're not giving you permission. So with children, it's not something that I love to do because, again, it's not really their choice. It's their parents' choice.
Yeah, for sure. What about, are you ever in a public place and you get like an energy from someone? You know what I mean? Do you ever get that where you get like an energy where you're just like, I wish I could give that person a reading, or I'm happy I'm not giving that person a reading. Like, I'm being positive, negative here, but you get that when you're out? It's like,
Not as much, only because I do a lot of protocol of closing my field when I'm out and about, but sometimes it does indeed happen. And the protocol I use, if it's a burning, sometimes with mediumship, it's really like the person won't leave you alone. And so I always tell whoever the soul is, the spirit, that they have to find a way to work it into the conversation, that I'm not going to impose on this individual. And normally they will bring something up and then I'll ask, are you open to a message? But typically you don't want to impose on people unless you have their explicit permission. It's very invasive and it can be very upsetting if you're, in the mall and you randomly walk up to someone and say, I have a message from your mother that's passed. I mean, that's very intrusive. You don't have permission, and it's definitely frowned upon in the industry, or it should be.
It should be, most definitely, because that would be really upsetting if you're not asking for that service or that energy or that message.
Exactly.
It could throw someone completely off for a very long time. But yeah, I was curious if you just felt that energies.
I can tell you one story that just popped in. They just gave it to me. I was going through security. I forget where. Somewhere. I always get stopped. I think they think I'm a mule or something. My bags and everything always get
They're like, what's with
really
this?
interesting. So they stopped and they were going through my bag, and the security woman, right away, there was a young man standing behind her, and he was alive. He was not passed over, and he was just, please tell her I'm alive. Her son was missing. And so I didn't say anything. Yeah. But she pulled my tarot cards out of my bag, and she said, Tarot, you're a reader. And I said, yes, I am. And she just looked at me with tears in her eyes, and she said, oh, this gets me every time. She said, all she said is my son. And I looked at her and I said, he's alive. And she was so moved, she had to leave. She had to leave her post, and she started to cry. And she came back and thanked me and said, that's what I needed to know. So wow. It was, as you can see, it's moving just still. Yes. It's hard to not get caught up in people's stories or tragedies or losses. And so I cry a lot in mediumship because you're experiencing so much love. It's like overwhelming, omnipresent love. And then you can almost feel the energy of the other person and their sadness, and it's hard to not tap into that at the same time. So it's like a flood of emotions. So I classically am like I should be called the crying medium, because anytime the energy comes through, not every time, but a lot of the times I'll tear up.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Well, it's beautiful that, you are feeling the good and the bad, as much as we only want to feel good. And it's beautiful that you welcome that, even though you know that it's not going to 100% feel good for you. So, that's a good thing. You still feel
it sometimes feels like you've been hit by a bus afterwards, but ultimately my job is just to pass on messages, and then I clear my energy field afterwards. But I find mediumship more tiring, and it's interesting because my mentor is a very celebrated medium, and she teaches mediumship. And she said that I'm working too hard at the connection, and that's why I'm tired. It's not mediumship that makes me tired. It's because I always put 150% into everything. So, and I think there's more discernment in being very careful with the delivery as well. Yeah. Because it's normally quite sensitive with folks. So there's a greater output of energy being put out, and that's where the fatigue comes from.
Wow. Yeah. So what do you do to, like you, what was the word terminology you used to, when you
clear my field? Yeah.
What do you do? Is it meditation? Is it going out for a walk? Is it going for a swim? Is it just shutting down social media? Like, what is it what do you do to do that? I'm curious.
I do a lot of self-care practice. You just have to. It's survival in this line of work, just like any service provider would tell you the same thing. I do a lot of outdoor activities. Yes, I love the beach and swimming. Sun gazing is a big one. Meditation, prayer, gratitude. I like to clean if I want to ground, or I'll walk my dog on the beach to get some grounding in. And we do like moon ceremonies and pay close attention to also the changes taking place energetically, almost like forecast what the energy is. So there's a lot of self-care involved. In prior to the preparation, there's probably about 2 hours worth of preparation prior to each day that I work. And I don't work every day. I only work 2 or 3 days a week. So
nice.
My friends joke that I'm half retired, but that's definitely not the case, because I also teach programs, but I definitely don't work like I used to. It's just physically impossible, But lots of grounding, lots of, opening the field of energy, and then after work, closing down the field, lots of clearing using, I like to use spiritual tools based on the area that's indigenous to me. So in Mexico, I love to pray to Lady Guadalupe, who's like the Mother Mary. She's the patron saint of Mexico. I like using products like Copal, which are indigenous to the region.
Yeah, that's what I was actually going to ask you. Like, what is it like being what you do for a living and living abroad? Or what's it just like living abroad, not being here? What's it like? Very many people, or?
The thing I love about living abroad is you're constantly adapting to your new surroundings. You're adapting to a new language, a new culture, and to know you're a visitor. We like to call ourselves expats, but ultimately we're immigrants. We're here and we're visitors. And there's a greater sensitivity I'm noticing when traveling to different countries with the rising costs of rent, and of course, Mexican people are being priced out of their own neighborhoods, just like if we talk about Vancouver, a lot of local Vancouverites are being priced out of their own neighborhoods. And in reality, this is happening all over the world. So it's important to really adapt to the culture. There's a lot of people who refuse to speak the language or adapt to, the nuances in the culture, which is a big mistake. You're missing out on the privilege of being here.
Well, and I think that's for any country, right? Like if you're going, try to be respectful and learn the language.
Absolutely.
You don't have to be perfect at it. Still speak in your native tongue, but at least make an effort. So that's why you're learning Spanish.
Yeah, in this part of Mexico, when I lived in Puerto Vallarta, there was a lot of English spoken, and a lot of my friends were expats, where this time around I have more local friends. And I find this area, because it has a younger demographic, more people speak Spanish. And for example, the condo I live in, none of the staff speak English, not even a little bit. So you just figure it out, you just learn, even if you learn 1 or 2 new phrases every day. I tend to be an immersive learner, so I'm pretty good at remembering words. It's just stringing the sentences together, but I'm learning a little bit more every day.
So what kind of people live abroad? Like, are they all, I think they're all single people, a certain age group? Like, I guess, what do you notice being a person who's traveled to 40 countries and lived the life that you live? What kind of people are they? Are you?
I should make mention, I've not lived in 40 countries. I've visited 40 countries. But I would say it depends on the city, really. The demographic changes. When I lived in Puerto Vallarta, there was a small digital nomad crowd, but there was mostly retirees from Canada and the US. So that bred a very different culture in the city. There was more English widely spoken. There were pubs that catered to these expats that typically didn't speak English, or pardon me, they did not speak Spanish. And here in Playa, everyone speaks a little bit of Spanish. It's a much younger demographic. You don't see as many retirees unless they're just visiting. You see a lot of young people that go to the gym. They're drinking their smoothies and their acai bowls, and they're riding their bikes on Avienda Quinta, which is like the main drag of the city. And it perpetuates a bit of a younger crowd. There's way more digital nomads here. And interestingly, it's a bigger melding pot. So we get a lot of Argentinians, Chileans, people from South America, but also from Europe. There's a huge French-Canadian population here, which is great for me, and because I'm one of them. And as well, just a lot of Europeans. So it's really neat to walk down the street and hear German and French, and sometimes I'm speaking a little Spanish, a little French, a little English, depending on where I'm going. And
It's
I think
it's kind of like Vancouver then. I mean, in a different way. There's all different types of people.
It's multicultural, and I love that. I mean, that's one of my favorite things about Vancouver. But here, I would say it's a stronger European presence. You get a lot more of the East Coast. So you get, that's the gateway to Europe, and it's also the gateway to South America. So I definitely would say it's a much broader scope of young people coming in and wanting to live here. So
when you made that choice to leave Vancouver, to leave here, what was were you just like, you know what, I'm doing this? Because you went on your own. You didn't go with anyone.
No, I went by myself. It's an interesting thing. I bought a condo very close to your place, by the way, in the Arbutus area there, Arbutus Ridge. And it was my dream condo, and it was gorgeous. And I had the car and the condo and the beautiful dog and great friends, amazing career, and could not for the life of me figure out why I was so darn miserable. And so I doubled down and thought, geez, I just have to be more grateful. And pretty soon I realized that my dream of owning a condo in Kitsilano ended up being a 10-year-old dream. And I'd actually outgrown the dream.
Yeah.
And so when I finally realized and tapped into that, I knew I had to leave. And so I sold everything. I sold my car, I sold my elliptical, I sold my condo, I sold everything, got rid of everything. My entire life fits in 3 suitcases, minus my dog. And I just went to Puerto Vallarta. And no, I did not know anybody. I just went.
So was it a quick decision? Was it just something because I know sometimes in my life, I've made these quick decisions that were terrible quick decisions, but there's been probably these pivotal parts in my life. Pursuit 365 is an example. It was a quick decision. This is what I need to do. This is what I'm going to do. And it's blossomed to what it is today, just because my gut, I knew, my gut. There's certain, things in my life, traveling alone sometimes, which were the best thing. I mean, I'm not talking like you, leaving, but going somewhere by myself, which changed my life because, I've met a few people. So sometimes these quick decisions are awful. And sometimes it's if I didn't just do that, and if I thought too much about it, I would have never done it. And my life wouldn't be what's today. So for you, when you made that choice to go, was it in a week that you were like, guess what? I'm leaving, I'm selling everything, I'm heading, or was it over 6 months or a year? How did that evolve for you? Because I love stories like this.
So once I realized I needed to go, I kept my condo and rented it out. But I pretty much got rid of all of my possessions. I got rid of my car. I kept a locked off, I had a den. I had 2 dens in my condo. So one of them I locked off and just kept a few items. And I rented out my condo, but the rest I got rid of everything. And I would say between making the choice to move and actually being gone was 3 weeks in total.
Wow. I love that so
very
much.
fast. Yes.
And it was one of the best things you've ever done.
It was incredible. I always tell people Puerto Vallarta is an incredible place. It was such a soft landing. I literally lived in a town called Cinco de Diciembre, which means 5th of December, but everyone called it 5D. And that's a very common expression in the metaphysical world. If you're living in 5D, you're living in the 5th dimension. It's an elevated plane of existence.
Yeah.
And in Puerto Vallarta, the Bay of Banderas, I was right on the beach. I had a condo right on the beach. And there are 12 energy vortices that are in the Bay of Banderas.
Wow.
That are healing. So there was a lot of healing work. I met incredible people that I'm friends with to this day. Actually, one of my neighbors moved to Playa. I'm meeting up with her for dinner tonight.
Amazing.
So it's interesting how it's you meet people from all over the world and you stay in touch. And so you end up with, friends in LA, New York, all over the place. Really. Yeah. Yeah.
Toronto.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
So what would you say to people that are considering a move like this? Like what do you need to know? Like we're just like, okay, I'm going to get up and leave. Was there something that you would recommend?
The one thing I've consistently witnessed, and by the way, there's some incredibly successful digital nomads down here, and they're doing really well. But I've seen some people get really enamored with the idea of living remote, but unfortunately, they don't have a proper business or formulated plan. And so what will happen is they'll make the move to jump. They think it's going to be dirt cheap, which, by the way, it is not. It depends where you live in Mexico, but if you live in a touristy place like Playa del Carmen or Puerto Vallarta, it's expensive.
Really expensive. They just think you're going to live off nothing, but you're not.
Oh no! Like if you want to live in, a newer building, you're going to be paying Canadian rents. You are not going to be paying. You don't have to. You can, live in a casita for 10,000 pesos if you want to. It just depends what your needs are. But I always say it's as simple as this. If you want to live like a Mexican and like the local people, you want to eat like them, live like them, you can live very reasonably. If you want to live like a Canadian or American, expect to pay the same, if not sometimes more.
Yeah, than what you're paying at home.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, not more. You will pay, there are services you will pay less. You'll pay less, for example, to go to the vet. You'll pay less in food. Things like that, you will notice a difference.
Yeah, like right now, food, being a lone parent or a single parent with my kids full time, let me tell you, bag of groceries right now is like, $100. Crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's nuts, but we do it. We figure it out.
Well, you and I, we used to live in the same neighborhood. And I remember one time buying vine ripened tomatoes, and this was 2021. I mean, this was before I left. And I remember they were $7 and they weren't even organic. And it was like 3 tomatoes. And that was kind of like, wow, this is, what's happening right now. So
yeah, it's frightening sometimes. I can see why people are growing their own veggies.
Yes. Yeah.
Growing and that. So there's something that you and I sort of talked about in the past, but not deeply. So what is, and I don't even know if I'm saying it correctly, geo arbitrage. Did I say that correct?
You did.
Good. I know we've had a little bit, but what is that?
So geo arbitrage is when you earn a living. For example, if you are Canadian and you are paid in Canadian funds, but you live abroad where the dollar is weaker. So for example, if I'm paid in Canadian funds, but I live under peso, then it's going to be a cheaper cost of living than if I was earning Canadian funds and paying Canadian prices. So again, it just depends how you want to live abroad. It very much varies. So you can live very reasonably in Mexico. It just depends how you want to live. But geo arbitrage, the idea is your dollar or your earnings go way further because the value of the dollar where you're living costs less.
So yes, I totally understand that. And so do you for instance, on my own website, right? Or my sites, if someone's purchasing from Australia, they pay Australian dollars. If they're paying from Canada, it's Canadian dollars, or if they're Canadian, if they're American. Is that kind of how yours is? Or do you just all charge in one?
No, I just charge in Canadian. I've got a lot of US clients. It's in Canadian, and a lot of those fees, a lot of my entrepreneur clients, which is a huge chunk of my clients, it's a write-off for them because I'm also a certified master coach. So they just get a receipt that says Maxine Friend International, receipt for services. So that also offsets the costs. It's a write-off to business owners, but it's in Canadian funds. So
that's amazing. That's really good. Those Americans must love that.
They do. Oh yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And again, that could change, over the next 10 years or something. The dollar can change. Things are happening so quickly.
Yeah, the peso is actually really expensive right now. Yeah. So When I pay my rent, I pay it through a company called Wise, which you can get multi-currency online bank accounts. It's kind of like PayPal, but international.
Yeah.
And well, PayPal is international, but it's just like you can set up payments for different currencies all over the world. Yeah. And you can always see what the currency is doing when you pay your rent. You can sort of see what the value is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So do you plan on, is there any, like, I know you were thinking about Portugal, but there was a little bit of issues with going to Portugal. Is there any other country right now that you can think of? Yeah, you know what? I could see me going there next. Is there somewhere?
Oh, there are so many places I would love to go, but I go where I can bring my dog. And so going to Europe, it's a little more involved. There needs to be a pet export certificate. We went through the whole process with Portugal. It's very involved. So I typically stick to countries that are very dog friendly for the time being and that are relatively easy to travel to and from. So I have temporary residency in Mexico, so it's very easy to come and go. And I just bring his paperwork and they do an inspection. They check his, he has a health history report from the vet, and that's all they check. So it's very easy. Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. Well, we should plan something like right now I'm working on a retreat in Hawaii because we've got about 6 or 8 people in Hawaii right now we're working with, but we're going to plan a Pursue 365 retreat to go meet our Pursue 365 people in Hawaii. So we should plan a retreat in Mexico with you as well.
Yeah, actually it's on my list of things I want to really create a retreat for a lot of entrepreneurs and light workers that are burnt out. Like give them something really beautiful where they don't have to serve anybody. They can just take care of themselves. So there's a lot of single moms like yourself and entrepreneurs like you that are just working tirelessly to get to be successful and take care of everybody. And so the idea of this retreat is to, so they can replenish and fill up their own cups so they can go back to their lives and feel fulfilled, like their cup is running over.
Oh, definitely. And when you do that, I find I come back stronger. So it's an investment into myself, both personally and professionally. I get shut down and then come back. So yeah, I definitely do. All right, Maxine. Well, for everyone out there, you can always go to Maxine's website, which is www.MaxineFriend.com. So not .ca people.com. And then her Instagram handle is @Maxine Friend. And so that's nice because they're both super easy. Maxine Friend. Maxine is our friend. Yeah. So I welcome everyone to go check out what Maxine is doing. And keeping up with her travels. And yeah, it's been so wonderful actually catching up and hearing more about what you do and your travels. And yeah, it just seems like you're not that far now.
And thank you, Shelly, for putting together, Pursuit 365 and bringing so many incredible entrepreneurs together. I've met so many incredible people through the community. So it's just a privilege to have been invited. So thank you so much.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you for trusting me and being part of our community. And you've actually introduced a whole bunch of people to our community. So thank you for that as well.
You're welcome. It's a good
friend. Well, let's plan a retreat, and I'm going to let you get on with your day now, but let's stay in touch. And it was so lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shelly.